just like you, we stand on the shoulders of generations way, way, way back when. And as I recently said at a conference, when someone was saying that they weren't very hopeful and because of things going crazy right now globally and nationally, they didn't have much hope. And this was a person of color, and they just didn't know what to happen. And I said, well, I hear you, but where you stand today and where I stand, we are the hopes and dreams of our predecessors.
Yes.
It may not be pretty, we may not be where we want to be, but we're not where we used to.
Right.
And if your great-grandmother, if your great-great-grandfather could look at you right now, he would be so proud and so happy.
One of the people who I followed for years and was like fortunate enough to be featured on his podcast at the end of last year is Tony Robbins. And one of Tony's biggest lessons, he's been consistent for years, is ask better questions. You got to ask questions. So rather than, well, why can't I have any more? Why can't I do this? Like that person said, well, might there be an opportunity further down the line or whatever that might be? Because like you're saying, stories make such a difference, being able to tell a story and people buy into it and follow it. And it's so interesting because...
So again, using that, your creativeness, build your brand, build your network, build your tribe. Don't let this opportunity pass.
Mm-hmm.
You may not see the results tomorrow. It may take 6 months or 9 months, but when you build a foundation, keep working on that thing. You will not lose it. It's like an education. Once you get it, you don't lose it.
Sometimes the way forward is taking a look back to remind ourselves of how far we've come. And I am doing exactly that for this episode of Conversations. I recently looked back in my archives and came across a conversation that I had during COVID-19. We were sheltering in place, and so I had made the decision to do a series of interviews with my most precious gifts, which are my friends and my mentors. So it was my 12 days of Roz Giving. It was my way of celebrating my birthday because we were sheltering in place. So it wasn't about going out or having a party or looking for gifts. I wanted to give a gift. And like I said, my most precious gifts are my friends and my mentors and the people who mean so much to me. And what was so interesting about this conversation is it applies right now. We were in perilous, uncertain times. And in this conversation with my dear friend, Bernard Boudreaux, we reminded each other that we're going to get through this. And we did. So I want to remind you that as uncertain as things seem right now, we are going to get through this. And the way that we're going to do that is to double down on our gifts, on our intentions, on sharing our stories, on encouraging and lifting one another up. Because that is what matters at the end of the day. It's not being consumed by fear and doubt, paralyzed by what may come next. As Tony Robbins says, the best way to ensure your future is to create it. And so don't give up your power by giving in to fear. And this episode will remind you of just that. So I want you to just know that your voice matters. Your story matters. And we will get through this. There is a brighter day coming. There has to be. And so be encouraged, stand 10 toes down on your gift, on your vision, on your goodness, and keep those that you love close. Let them know how much they matter. And that's why I'm sharing this with you, because this message matters and you matter to me. So to that end, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe, hit like, and absolutely hit the bell so that you'll be notified every time something drops. Because I'm going to be doubling down on sharing my information, sharing my knowledge, helping you to stand tall and come forward with your story using your voice, because your voice matters now more than ever. So let's check out the episode. I know you're going to enjoy it because I so enjoyed revisiting it. So stay close, leave a comment. You know, I'm always happy to hear from you, and you know, I will respond. So let's check out the episode. I'll see you soon. Peace.
Hey there, hey there. I am here, here, here. Hey, Bernard, look at you, looking like God.
I'm
Hold on.
having a beautiful day at the beach.
Well, I am not mad at any of it. None of it. Yeah, you look amazing, friend.
Thank you. You do too. You do too.
All right, I think we're in. I think the rest of the party
is now streaming live on Facebook. Hey, Facebook.
Yay. Hey, Facebook. Yay. So we have gotten it all done and gotten it done right. So woo, woo, hoo. So now I can do my official start. And today is day 3 of 12 days of Roz Giving. And
happy birthday! Happy birthday!
Thank you. It has been an amazing celebration. And I've always been this girl that I celebrated my birthday for the entire month of May. And so, you know, this time last year, I was in Paris celebrating my birth and my rebirth because I had made some, you know, wonderful changes in my life. And I went to celebrate all of that. And I felt like this year, since I couldn't, I wanted to be the one to give gifts. And so the gifts that I decided to give are the people in my life who I love and appreciate, who have impacted me and inspired me and mentored me and just been my friend. And Bernard, you, as you know, you were one of the first calls. And so I want to just thank you so, so much for being here.
You are very, very, very welcome. And I recall your prep for going off to Paris last year, and while you were there and seeing your sights and sounds, and I was curious to see, okay, what's she going to do this year? I know May's coming up and she's not going to be in France. So this is a fantastic. And you know I'm going to steal pieces of this when my birthday comes up in October. I am going to steal some of these.
Good. And that's what this is all about. And we won't tell it all, but you know, you and I had a great little text exchange shortly before we started all of this. And one of the things that I wanted to do is, like, you know, go straight, no chaser. You know, it's like me getting to be with my friends, sharing who they are and how they show up in the world. And one of the things that I admire and appreciate about you, Bernard, is you've had, you know, a really successful career in the corporate arena. And yet and still you have the ability to still just show up fully and authentically as yourself. And you have a way of navigating those two worlds so well. So you could be at an event and greet people and be everything that your corporation, well, I met you while you were at Target, needed you to be, but you could also go to a concert, holler out and get Liz Wright to add a song to her set that she hadn't planned to do. So tell us a little bit about your journey, you know, who you are, how you started, where you came from, and how you became the fabulous person that you are today.
Okay. Well, I became the fabulous person that I am today, to use your words, mainly because of the work of a whole lot of people, because of a tribe, if you will. You know, whether it be, well, actually, and just like you, we stand on the shoulders of generations way, way, way back when. And as I recently said at a conference, when someone was saying that they weren't very hopeful, and because of things going crazy right now, globally and nationally, they didn't have much hope. And this was a person of color, and they just didn't know what to happen. And I said, well, I hear you, but where you stand today and where I stand, we are the hopes and dreams of our predecessors.
Yes.
It may not be pretty. We may not be where we want to be, but we're not where we used to be.
Right.
And if your great-grandmother, if your great-great-grandfather could look at you right now, he would be so proud and so happy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I say that to say, you know, I am the youngest of 8 kids. And that's significant on my journey because much of what I know, do, see is benefited from watching them, watching what happened with them, watching how my parents worked with them. And a lot of the quotes I use from my father, especially, my siblings would say, Dad never said that to you. No, but he said it to you. I understood what he meant by that.
Right.
I was very, very fortunate. I grew up in California. I grew up in Sonoma County. Went to Sonoma State. And one of the best courses, probably the best course I had at Sonoma State, was a course taught by this woman named Judy Gottlieb. And it was organizational communications, or what your mother would tell you if she could be the CEO of a major corporation.
Okay.
You know, this was 40 years ago, and 40 years ago, you saw very, very, very few women. You still see few now as a CEO of a corporation. And I love just the title of it. First of all, what your mother would tell you, not what your daddy would tell you, what your mother
would tell you, right?
And there was no textbook, but she had a lot of guest lecturers coming in. And I was studying business management, and the whole thing was how to communicate, how to navigate corporate America. Granted, this was back in 1980.
Mm-hmm.
Corporate America was different than it is now, but the communication piece is still just as valid. And one of the things I loved about Judy, and it's still today, is, and I was the only Black person in the class, and she said, you need to be true to you.
Yeah.
No matter what you do and how you do, you need to be true to you. As my friend Carolyn Wagner, who is the Chief Diversity Officer at Target, would say, who you are is non-negotiable.
Right.
And that sticks with me, because if you're in a relationship, if you're working someplace and you can't be who you are, you're in the wrong place.
Yeah.
You know, I worked for Target for over 30 years before I retired from them to join Georgetown. And I loved one of the Target, you know, cultural HR things was to bring your whole self to work. And quite often, you don't want me to bring my whole self to work. I know you, and I know you believe it, and I know you mean it, but you really don't. Because sometimes you say or do something, and you're like, wow, you brought your whole self. And I'm like, no, I brought 50% of me, because I know you can't handle all of me.
You can't handle the truth.
Exactly. You know, because you're in Minneapolis, and Minneapolis thinks, wow, he's kind of out there. Oh, no, baby, this ain't out there. This is Monday. If you want to stay out there, you wait till Friday night. That's a whole different kind of out there.
Yeah.
But that said, getting back to your question, I was very blessed and very fortunate not only to come from a large family and have a family of achievers, and I like to think that of my 8 siblings, I'm the underachiever of the 8. My achiever, my grandparents were achievers, my siblings are achievers, and you've met most of my siblings.
Yeah.
I have had some incredible mentors and sponsors and coaches at different companies over the years, and most of them did not look like me.
Mm-hmm.
Did not talk like me. And too often, I think when I'm talking to young people, they're looking for a mentor who looks like them and has their life experience. And that's not necessarily what you need in your life. You need someone who could be different than you, could be 30 years older or much younger or a different gender or whatever, to help either mentor you or coach you or be your sponsor. When the doors are closed and you're not there, you need a sponsor to speak up for you, to say, she is the right person for that role. He is the right person for that role.
Right.
And most of my career up until now, all of my career had been in retail, working for a retailer. Maybe not working retail specifically, but working for a retailer.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them all of them with the exception of Target. So I worked for 6 of them. 5 of the retailers I worked for since my first retail job no longer exist. The retail world has changed. Corporate America has changed.
Right.
Going back to my very first one, I still have relationships with people I worked with then.
Yeah.
The late 70s. And relationships are key. And that's what got me to where I am today.
Yeah. No, and I get that. And I think it was really cool that, you know, you differentiate between a mentor and a sponsor, because a lot of times people don't really know what that means. And especially if you haven't come up in the corporate world, because as you well know, my journey was different in that I'm an artist, but I founded a nonprofit. So I had to learn the language and the culture and all of that. And so, you know, that was one of the big things, you know, I could always come to you and say to you, well, what about this? Or what do you think about that? Or, you know, how do I position this? And I think so many times, and I think the other thing, you know, one of the many things that I love about you is that you get the arts and that you have a passion for the arts. And so many times artists think that the corporate world has nothing to do with them, you know, and like, you just cannot not know how to participate, you know, in the totality of what everything is. And I think especially like right now with COVID-19 and sheltering in place and, you know, like, you know, we're watching, you know, artists online or on television. You know, you sent me a link last night of people that you were watching. And so understanding now what that looks like for an artist. How does an artist, if you don't have a venue right now to play, or they're not doing venues, like what does that look like when we start having conversations about how do I partner? How do I understand what the corporate world has to do with me? Because all I do is visidarte, you know, but what does that mean for artists? And what, you know, I mean, everybody, but I really, because a lot of my tribe is artists, I'd love to speak to it from a place of people who wouldn't normally think about going into the corporate world or partnering with corporations.
One thing artists know how to do better than anything, I think, is pivot. Artists know how to pivot and respond based on, ooh, the audience isn't feeling this, they're feeling that. Or it's raining, or ooh, the stage isn't what I thought it was going to be, or my instrument, my fill in the blank. Artists know how to do this.
Right.
They're a visual artist, ooh, I ran out of blue, let me work with green. I don't have the brass to, whatever. And in order to be successful in business, you have to know how to pivot. You have to know how to be creative and say, this strategy did not work as planned. You don't just throw up your hands and say, well, we got to close shop. We got to go out of business. No, we got to pivot. What do we do? Many of the best mentors I've had have been people with a strong arts background.
Wow.
In America, because they have a creative way of thinking of things. And I'm not going to do the whole right brain, left brain thing, but it's more about, okay, if not this, then what? And I lean on my artistic friends for stuff like that. Creativity is critical for a strong business, and communication more than anything. So when you think of the creative writing in any type of business, you have to be able to communicate effectively.
Mm-hmm.
Reaching out to businesses, or whether it's a nonprofit organization and you're trying to pitch a sponsorship of an event, or you're looking for funding for your programmatic work, or you're a entrepreneur and you want to get your product, you want to get your stuff to be picked up by a business, you have to be able to communicate that succinctly, but also with a story to catch their interest. What's the hook? Because we've seen many artists, it's like, okay, that's nice, but it didn't catch my attention.
Yeah.
You need to get that attention.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. And especially the storytelling part. And I think that that's one of the things that served me so well, is that I am a storyteller. You know, I started out singing jazz to pay for my voice lessons and, you know, my classical voice lessons. And then I became a classical soprano. So like we were laughing at the beginning, you got to riff and you got to vibe and you've got to read the room. You have to know who you're talking to and what it is that you need to say to them. And I think one of the big things when you talk about telling the story, and I think the biggest thing that I ever learned and took away from my time with Target was when Target's message was making the arts affordable and accessible to all communities, you know, and that was so aligned with what Opera Noir was doing at the time. So that was for me an easy fit and an easy way to tell the story. But then the parameters changed and it was something different. And, you know, I know people talk about this all the time, you know, the sense of entitlement of this generation. It's all generations because, you know, yep. any nonprofit that you funded once, think you're supposed to fund them for the rest of it. Right. Forever. So when the cheese moves or when the narrative changes, what is that move? What does that pivot look like?
Yep. And I'm going to back up for a second to tell your tribe, tell your friends, tell the folks who are listening how we actually met, because it relates to that. So we met in Los Angeles, And I was actually at a meeting with another arts organization that was run by a dear friend of yours who I was working with. And at the time we weren't close friends, but I knew her very well. And actually for me, she was more of she was clued in and tapped into pretty much everybody and anybody. Her name was Charmaine. And so we finished our meeting, and I was with one of my colleagues, Jan, and Charmaine said, "Oh, okay, so, this is great, da, 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 da. I'll see you later tonight at the event." And I said, "Oh, you're going to the gala also?" And it was this event at the Biltmore. And she's like, "No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the Opera Noir event." And I said, "The who?" Opera Noir Divas and Dessert. And I'm like, Opera Noir Divas and Dessert. I have no clue what you're talking about. And so I turned to my colleague Jan, and Jan just shrugged her shoulders with I don't know what you're talking about. So Charmaine says, "Surely you were invited to the Opera Noir event." I said, "I've never heard of Opera Noir." So she says, "Well, then I don't know what your plans are at the Biltmore. You need to cancel them. You need to go to the Opera Noir event." Now, unfortunately, the Biltmore event, we were just going as a guest and just to smile and shake hands. There was no, if we didn't go, so we quickly canceled that and went to the Opera Noir event. Oh, and she also said, "This event, it's Divas and Dessert. It's a concert. It's a grown folks event, but it's your type of event. I don't think it's a Target thing, but it's certainly a Bernard thing." Like, okay. We went, and I've told you this before, I was blown away. I had honestly never seen anything like it. I was so blown away. It was beautiful. It was intimate. It was professional. It was classy. It was at a Disney concert hall. And while I didn't know you and I didn't know any of the performers there were some dancers there and some singers there. There were other corporate leaders there who I knew. Credibility. One in particular, Jonathan, was there. First names because I don't want people to jump in other people's business. And I knew Jonathan, who's with a major financial institution. And we started chit-chatting, and he's like, "Oh, I didn't know Target supported them also." I'm like, "We don't, and I don't know that actually we would. This is great, but it's not really what Target does in the arts." Well, he says, "Well, they do this with schools and this with students and this and this and this. I think they do a lot of stuff that aligns with Target." I'm like, "I didn't know they did that. Of course, I didn't know anything about them." Well, then, of course, I had a conversation with you, and it just flew from there. And I say all of that to say it was the relationship. It was Charmaine saying, "Yeah, you need to check them out. You will like this."
Right.
Jonathan saying, "Actually, I know what's important to your organization.
Right.
You don't see that right now because that's not where you are. Most of what they do is more in line with what you're wanting." That meant more than getting a brochure or looking at a website or anything. Yeah. Having trusted resources, trusted people give me that insight. And then, of course, Jan was in tears over the whole show, and I'm trying to look back because it's like, this is fantastic. That said, quite often, to your point, when businesses especially, more so than foundations or individuals, when businesses go into a partnership, whether it's with a nonprofit organization or a entrepreneur for business, rarely a marriage forever and ever and ever and a day. Rarely.
Right.
Typically seasonal. That is the typical thing. It can be transactional. But communication is important because you have to understand that going into it so that you're not cut off at the knees when you realize 1 year later, 5 years later, whatever the time frame is, "What do you mean you're not going to keep partnering with us? I thought we were madly in love forever and ever to the day." No, we were never madly in love forever to the day that we died.
Right.
For this piece of time, I needed you to do X, Y, and Z. Or we lived here, we wanted this. Now we're moving, so we don't want that anymore. We don't need that. And too often we forget that. We assume that we're both wanting the exact same things for the same time frame. And in relationships, quite often that does not happen.
Quick question. Are you a business owner or content creator trying to crack the social media code and still not seeing any results? Or maybe you're a woman who's outgrown the life you've worked so hard to build, but not sure how to say it or what to do next. I understand how frustrating that can be, but don't worry. You're not confused. You're not crazy. You're evolving, and you don't have to figure it out alone. The Reclaim Your Dream virtual retreat is your chance to pause, reflect, and get clear on what's next without sacrificing your income, your values, or your peace. Reclaim Your Dream is a masterclass for the woman that you're becoming. Inside, you'll get focused coaching, personalized support, and a close knit tribe that sees you, hears you, and will remind you of what you're capable of. But here's the thing, this retreat is not for everyone. It's for women who are done playing small and ready to build a brand and a life that aligns with who they really are. If that's you, apply to join the wait list. Click the link in the show notes or send me a DM on LinkedIn or Instagram. You'll be the first to know when the next session opens. Look, you've poured into everything and everyone else. Now it's time to reclaim your dream. I can't wait to support you. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
Going back to communication. So I always urge nonprofit organizations, especially, find out what the timeline they're thinking.
Yeah.
If a company says, yep, we're thinking of partnering with you, we love it, we're going to do it. Great. Is this a one-time thing? Is it 1 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years? Most companies will be honest with you. They're not going to say, forever and a day, because they don't know that. But rarely will they say, it won't be more than 5. Rarely will you hear more than 5 years.
Right.
You know what, 1 or 2 years, or maybe 5 years. You need to know that, because if that's okay with you, that, okay, we'll dance for 2 or 3 years and then we're done, then you know. But if you're thinking, I'm going to use a line item for this and every year we're going to count on this, then you're in trouble. You're going to be cut off at the knees.
Yeah, absolutely. and I think it's also, like you talked about the pivot, but also being forward thinking, because, sometimes you may be able to extend it a little bit longer because where your partner is going. And you may be able to not like make up some crazy stuff, but just move some of the stuff so it aligns more. But it's also, like you said, it's also important to know when the party is over. One of my mother's favorite sayings is, you went too far, you stayed too long, and you paid too much. And so you need to know, like, okay, this party's fitting to end, and I need to know what the next thing is. And I think that back to the conversation that you and Jonathan had, because he knew, and you guys were colleagues in that space, the other conversation is that we need to ask our partners, our corporate partners, well, who else might we be of benefit to? Yes.
Again, that's relationships, because, just because, bringing it personal. So quite often we look at that organization and say, that's perfect. That organization is perfect for us. We need to get them. Well, are you perfect for them?
Yeah.
I can't make you love me if you don't. So if they don't, that's okay. But who might? So I may look at Roz and say, okay, Roz, we both speak French. We both love France. We both love jazz. We love this and this and this. We're a perfect couple. Let's go out. Let's build a life together. And Roz will look at me out of the corner of her eye and I'm like, no, this ain't for you, baby. This ain't gonna work. But I can introduce you to someone who I think would be a good fit for you. Then it's on me. Okay, am I gonna sit on the floor and mad because she won't go out with me and I think we're a perfect fit? No, we're not a perfect fit. Just because I want something doesn't mean she's gonna want something. It's the exact same way with corporations and foundations. Any corporate relationship you both have to want something different, and it may be different. So for example, you touched on that. When Target specifically partnered with Opera Noir, when we met, it was at an event that I'm going to call a grown folks event that was sophisticated and grown folks and dressy. Now, if Opera Noir had approached Target for that event, Target would have said, no, we're not interested in that.
Right.
When we finally talked, it was about, we're making arts accessible to children and especially kids of color, and exposing that, okay, that we are interested in. And then as our relationship pivoted and Target moved away from arts, we actually, perhaps with a stakeholder engagement lens, okay, moving away from an arts lens, moving away from a volunteer lens, perhaps with the stakeholder engagement lens, there's an opportunity to do this over here. Looks very different, but there was still an opportunity to have some engagement. But that comes with a relationship when you communicate back and forth on what's going on. And like any type of relationship, if you don't honestly communicate what's happening and hear each other. So I give you a lot of credit. And I remember putting on social media several years ago, we had a hard conversation on, okay, the company's pivoting, going to be supporting the arts we used to. And your response was, unlike other organizations were getting the same message, your response was, I appreciate the fact that you guys were able to support for so many years. Thank you.
Yeah.
It wasn't a, what did we do wrong? Or how can we find, but our kids are so good, the services are needed, the blah, blah. We know all of that. We know it's needed. We know that we're moving a different direction. And your response was, thank you. Thank you for supporting. Thank you for letting us know. Which left a good taste in the mouth. So when an opportunity did come up later, we could come and say, hey, there's an opportunity. It's not a forever opportunity. It's just this.
Right.
Just it. And you were quick to say, sure, we can go on a quick date. Love it.
Exactly. And just in the telling of it, just you telling again that story, because like you're saying, stories make such a difference, being able to tell a story and people buy into it and follow it. And it's so interesting because, as you know, part of my expansion and pivot is the work that I'm doing as, an online content creator and influencer and course creator and all of that. And again, it comes back to telling stories, because I'm not going to just say, hey, I can fix your life. Sign up for this course because I can fix your life. But what I can say is, I went through this situation. This is what happened to me. And this is how I got up and kept going, or this is how I reinvented myself. And so that's how I get to tell that story to my tribe. And I really hope that my tribe is listening right now, because those of you who think that like corporate is always this, like Bernard just told an amazing story. So go back and replay this and listen to what that journey was and how we can continue to keep a relationship, to keep a dialogue, to be open to what the change is, to be open to what may be coming next. And because of, again, in this time when no one knows what next looks like, Bernard, like nobody knows what next looks like. But I think that, and you tell me if I'm wrong, I do think that it's still about continuing to consistently tell your story. It's like, now is not the time to be like, oh God, I'm just going to wait and see what happens and hope they call me again.
Right. I'm going to give you a really quick story related to that I told recently at some MBA students at Georgetown. And several years ago, stop for a second. I still consult for Target, so technically I watch what I say because I still work with them. So for a long time, Target had a major priority focus on K-12 education, helping kids learn, several years, over $1 billion focused on K-12 education, directly supporting K-12 education, and 1 million hours a year of volunteer service.
Wow.
So when that was coming to a close, because Target was pivoting to something else, my role was to make phone calls or meet with some of the largest partners that Target had, which were either school districts or nonprofits, to provide this information. Most of them were superintendents, but some very large nonprofits. And as you can imagine, many times conversations did not go well.
Mm-hmm.
So I had this one particular meeting that, okay, not great. And as I was leaving the meeting, this executives, nonprofit organizations, administrative assistant sat in on the meeting, and she was just taking notes. She said very little during the meeting. So I'm leaving the meeting. She goes out to her desk and she's like, Bernard, could I ask you one question? And I said, sure. And I thought it was, why are you doing this? Or, this is, and she's like, I know Target is going to pivot to something else. And I know Target's not ready to announce what it is. Is there an opportunity down the road for us to partner again? And that was a beautiful question.
Right.
It was interesting because her boss and her boss's boss did not ask that question. And I said, I am 99.9% sure we will be able to partner again.
Mm.
And she said, okay, this is not all bad news.
Right.
It's not all bad news.
Yeah.
Often we think we have the whole, in life in general, we think we have the whole picture right in front of us at that time. And the truth is we don't have the whole picture.
Right.
For what, not to get all spiritual, but we don't know what's ahead of us.
Right.
Was the door closed? We don't know that the window is wide open over there.
Right.
We know that, yeah, the door closed, but it's not locked.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, like you're saying, that whole, one of the people who I followed for years and was like fortunate enough to be featured on his podcast at the end of last year is Tony Robbins.
That was great. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. And one of Tony's biggest lessons, he's been consistent for years, is ask better questions. You know, you got to ask questions. So rather than, well, why can't I have any more? Why can't I do this? Like that person said, well, might there be an opportunity further down the line, or whatever that might be? And so I think one of the questions that I want to ask you, because, well, first of all, I want to stop because like we've kind of just said Georgetown, but we haven't really said Georgetown, you know. So you left, you know, Target, still in great relationship, still consulting for them, whatever. And you were going to go and consult, not necessarily into academia. And this, again, this is the thing I think is so fascinating about you, is how you can bridge worlds and bridge communities. So can you just talk a little bit about what your role is at Georgetown right now, what you're doing?
Yes, I'll tell you how I got there also, because it goes back to relationships. I had worked on, and Target was really helpful after 34 years. Okay, we kept pushing out my retirement plan from Target, and I'd been in retail. I didn't want retail. I knew I was going to consult. I knew I was going to consult for nonprofits and for corporations. I would do X, Y, and Z. Target actually helped me set up my consulting business. They changed my internal role so that I would build more muscle on internal consulting. Really, that was very beneficial. Well, also the past couple of years at Target, I was doing some volunteering at the McDonough School of Business at Georgetown, specifically in their executive education for nonprofit side. And I had friends who had said, why are you volunteering at Georgetown? Georgetown's a huge university. They can pay you. You don't need to volunteer. I'm like, well, I know the head of the program. I know the dean. It's a very cool program, and nonprofits are really benefiting from it. So it's not costing me anything to do this, and it's benefiting them. And I like DC, so why not volunteer? Why not do this? I got nothing to lose from this.
Right.
You know how we can be sometimes, especially some of us, we're like, you're gonna pay me. I'm not showing up unless you're gonna pay me. I'm like,
right.
No, like Target is paying me. I'm not hurting for money.
Right.
So fast forward, summer of 2018, June of 2018, we were coming up on retirement. Target made this announcement. I hadn't even thought to tell Georgetown about it because they don't care. I mean, I didn't think they cared. And they saw the announcement, and I got a note saying, are you still going to volunteer if you're not working for Target? And I said, actually, no, mainly because, we've ever talked about this, but Target pays for my flight to DC, pays for my hotel room. So while I'm volunteering at the university, in theory, Target's paying for this. I'm not going to use my own dime to fly out there or to stay in the hotel because I stay in nice hotels. So no offense, I'm done. Love you, mean it, but bye. So they said, well, what if you come to work part-time for us? We'll pay you to do what you did. Right? You'll pay me to volunteer. Well, it won't be volunteer, you'll be staff. It'll be part-time, just exactly what you did as a volunteer. Come on staff and do that. Okay. Can I still consult? That was my question. Can I still consult? And they said, we actually would prefer that you do. So I did that for a while and actually loved it a little bit too much because, you think an organization when you volunteer for them, but then once you start working for them, you realize, okay, I pull back the curtain now.
Right.
So for those people who I ask questions, why do we do it that way? Why does she do that? Why does he do that? Wouldn't it be better if we tried this? What? And that ruffles some folks' feather. And academia is not my world. at all, it's not my world. And how come I talk to the school of such and such? And why don't we go over there and do that? And I didn't realize there were fiefdoms and people didn't talk to each other, and don't look at that dean, don't talk to that person, because I'll talk to anybody and everybody. Fast forward, they asked me, would I come in for the next year, meaning fall of 2019 and 2020, as the director or co-director of the program. I'm like, okay, you realize that some of the staff does not appreciate all of me because I challenge and ask questions. And their response was, yeah, we actually think the program is better because of your questions and because of the things that you run. Otherwise, we'd be maintaining what we always have done.
Right.
The program is in the School of Business. It's part of their executive education program. It's called New Strategies for Nonprofit Leaders. And it is 100% laser focused on revenue. So how do nonprofit organizations diversify their revenue or generate more revenue? There are 4 forums a year. They're relatively small. No more than 60, 65 people can participate at a time because we do very one-on-one curated instructions per the leader there. And then we do what we call peer-to-peer curated meetings. So we will see Susie and Billy Bob have similar challenges, but Susie's definitely done much further with her organization than Billy Bob. We will pair those two together to talk about it because Susie typically will say, well, we're a social service organization, so we can't do X, Y, and Z. Well, Billy Bob's social service organization, same size as you, same type of community, and he does that and gets $3 million a year from it. Oh. Well, he must be an exception. I don't know. Billy Bob, he can help you with that. Now, Billy Bob, you have a lousy social media presence, but Susie Q's got a great media presence. Help her with that. Well, we can't do social media because we don't want to exploit our kids. Well, Susie, do you exploit? No, this is what we do. Okay, so anyway, that short version of what the program is. So a little over 1,000 nonprofits have gone through the program since its inception. Like everybody else, we're challenged right now because, well, we had to cancel our May forum for obvious reasons. And now the question is, because it takes place on campus, Georgetown has not announced yet what the story is for fall classes.
Right.
If fall classes go on, then we're going to go on with our fall forums. If fall classes do not happen, we've got to rethink and pivot what we're going to do.
Right.
The program is 100% funded by corporations and foundations. The nonprofits don't pay anything. So 60% of my job is working with corporations to write checks to pay for it. 40% of my work is with the nonprofits who attend.
Right, right. And interestingly enough, just like you were saying, like taking some of this for your birthday, a lot of this is going online. You know, it may become that Zoom conference and whatever that is, and kind of making that pivot, if you will. And it's funny because it's a nice segue too into my next question. And I know that we're not fortune tellers per se, but when we look at, okay, what's happening right now, looking at the messaging that corporations are putting out right now, because people need to hear it's going to be okay. We care about what happens to you. We're taking the necessary measures and precautions to make things right or good or safe or whatever that is. I think as we look at with smaller organizations or individuals, like you said, entrepreneurs, partnering with corporations, one, it's always about listening to what the narrative is already. What would you say to a smaller, either nonprofit or an entrepreneur that's saying, okay, what do I do next? How do I become of value? Not how do I get something from a corporation? How do I become of value to the corporate community during this time?
I would say first and foremost, put your mask on first before helping others. So meaning take care of you. Take care of your circle. If you have employees, take care of your employees. I actually did a webinar last week for Georgetown specifically on corporate responsibility and what's the good, the bad, and the ugly that I see corporations doing. And there's some good stuff that corporations are doing. There's some phenomenal stuff. And then there's some, are you kidding me? Are you seriously kidding me?
Right.
So from a, first and foremost, take care of your people. I'm not saying that the planet is not important. I'm not saying that products not important. I'm not saying that people. So if you're a small organization and you have people, and you are people, take care of you first. So and then support others and build from that. And then secondly, make sure that you are true to your brand, you're honest, and that so that you can be relevant when this passes. This will pass.
Yes.
Pass tomorrow or in 3 months, it will pass.
Absolutely.
So when it does pass, you want your brand, your organization, your whatever to still be relevant, to still be strong, and not to have been watered down because of some decisions you made out of fear, out of anxiety, out of whatever's happening today.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, and especially like that scarcity mindset, that like, oh my God, I got to do this or I got to do that. And I mean, it works both ways, because what I can say is like just what you're saying. I think now, and correct me if you don't agree, I think now it's really about building your brand, staying consistent to what your message is. You know, what are you bringing, or what are you
doubling down on your message?
Yes, doubling down, absolutely. And it's so funny because that's one of the things that I've been doing in my, you know, I go live a lot. Well, I'm live now, but you know, when I do my teaching and whatever, is like I said, like you're saying, double down on your goodness, double down on your message, double down on your service and how you show up in the world, get better at what you do. And so for me, you know, I'm all about people living into their dreams, living into the best and highest version of who they want to be, you know, living a life filled with joy and vibrancy and purpose. So I'm so clear on what my message is. And some people are like, but you can't teach that right now. People are afraid. Child, if you need to dream at any time, now's the time to dream big. You know, all of those things you said you never had time for. Well, I wish I would have, or I could have, but I never had the time. We all got time right now.
Right.
You know. We've got time more than anything. And so again, like you're saying, being of service, staying on message, staying on task. And if you do have something to offer it, you know, because a lot of people too are afraid to sell right now.
Yep.
And I think it has to be an elegant sell, just like, you know, in the nonprofit world, it has to be an elegant ask. But if you have something that's going to help people right now and you're not gouging the price, I think that that's how we support the economy, how we support one another, that I've got this and you've got that, and let's do that.
So I am so impressed with the creative community right now in making masks. Really simple. You know, we see, now granted, I kind of joke that, okay, we have enough masks, people. It's enough. You don't need to get your grandma out there to make some more masks. Maybe we don't, though. But I have actually, well, 6 months ago, if you had said, hey, Bernard, do you want to buy some face masks to go to the store? They're only $10 each. Have you lost your mind? I probably have 8 or 9 masks now because, oh, I like that design. I like that pattern. I like this. I like that. Okay. And I see them left and right. But more specifically, going back to creativity, there are many companies out there, about a dozen, who have pivoted. So their stores are closed. Their stores are closed, so they're not selling product.
Mm-hmm.
They pivoted some of their manufacturing to make personal protective equipment for the medical community, for founders, okay, that is creative. When you get AB InBev, when you get a Budweiser to say, okay, we're gonna take down these 2 lines of alcohol, and they sell alcohol to make hand sanitizer, LVMH. You know, who makes Louis Vuitton and Dior and all those fragrances. So a lot of the department stores, most are closed.
Right.
So, you know, who sells LVMH? Macy's does, Neiman Marcus, Saks Fifth Avenue. They're closed. So nobody's buying Dior unless they're buying it online. They're not going in the store to buy it. So they took their factories and said, we're going to make hand sanitizer. Mm-hmm. Not their corporate responsibility department talking. That was not their charitable arm. That was somebody in operations who's creative and said, there's something we can do right now. We've got employees. We want to keep them employed. We want to keep them doing something. What can we make that people need? Mm-hmm. Get and give it away. I gotta applaud that creative thinking.
Yeah.
That same thing applies to small entrepreneurs, maybe even more so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Because I remember Charmaine was talking one time, and she said one of the benefits, because, you know, smaller nonprofits or businesses or whatever sometimes feel like the small stepchild. But one of the things that she said was a smaller nonprofit is more nimble. And so sometimes they're an easier partner because, you know, it's not this big mammoth kind of organization. And like you, to your point, like, we need this. Okay, Roz, we weren't funding you anymore. This opportunity is here. Do you want it? And, you know, I didn't have to go through 20 layers or whatever. I could say, yeah, you know, let's do this. Let's make this move. And thank you for the opportunity. So I think that you're right that I used to always say this about Opera Noir, and I think you would agree, that I used to always say that Opera Noir was a small company doing big things.
Yep.
Because I had big, bold, beautiful ideas, you know, and it was, you know, a smaller nonprofit. And in my journey as a founder was, you know, it took me a while to learn how to scale, you know, and there's a ton of reasons for all of that. One was just doing too much, you know, because just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should do something.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah. So
you can say that again, actually. I don't know if everybody heard you clearly on that one.
So in the words of Les Brown, write that down, please. Just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should do something. So yeah, that's definitely it. And so as we're looking at, you know, this time, and I like to call it an opportunity. Yes, there's a lot of scary things going on. There's a lot of horrible things. There's a lot of sad things, but there are a lot of opportunities as well. And so if there were one message, or here we go, if there was one do and one don't, what would you say they are right now?
The do, I would say, and we touched on this, but I'm going to go back to it, is use this time to build your fill in the blank. I'm going to say brand, but for some people that's a scary word. So to build your organization, build your brand, build your network, build your whatever. And do not take any excuses, meaning, yeah, but I'm stuck at home. Yeah, but I'm this. You know what? Some of the most wonderful things I've seen has been online with tiny nonprofit organizations who are maximizing free resources online. They're creating TikTok videos and Facebook Live and basically emphasizing their organization, their work, their skills, their dance, their stuff. And building their brand. They're being true to their brand, but they're also building an audience. I talked to an organization just recently who had to cancel their gala. They did an online virtual gala. It wasn't a gala, but basically telling stories and interviews that were pre-recorded, so it wasn't live. They raised more money online than they did last year at their sit-down gala, which was at a nice hotel. But they didn't have the expenses of the dinner, all that kind of stuff, and nor the staff. So again, using that, your creativeness, build your brand, build your network, build your posse, your tribe.
Yeah.
What don't let this opportunity pass.
Yes.
Pass this way again.
Yes.
So take this opportunity and change your language, because quite often we are stuck at home. No, you're not stuck at home. You're safe at home.
Come on. Yes, sir.
You are not unable to do this. You're actually able to do that. So how do we make sure that we're catching ourselves and our internal, if only, to build on that?
Mm-hmm.
We need not see the results tomorrow. It may take 6 months or 9 months, but when you build a foundation, keep working on that thing. You will not lose it. It's like an education. Once you get it, you don't lose it.
Right.
I would encourage everyone, work on you, work on your brand, work on your networks, reach out. And if you can help somebody else, help somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I have two parting questions that I ask. And so, well, actually 3, because the first one is, how can people find you and follow you? Where do you live in the cyber world? Where can they find you and follow you?
Most easily is on Twitter, Bernard Boo, Bernard_Boo, BOO. I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn. The two best ways, because I'm pretty much on all the places. I don't do TikTok because I'm too old for TikTok. But
change that language.
I'm on LinkedIn multiple times a day. I'm on Twitter multiple times a day. So if you want to communicate with me, those two places, you'll definitely find me.
Okay, great. And then as you are, I mean, we're all at different iterations of our life because it's a journey. When you think about this season in your life, what you're doing now, you've retired from one thing that you've been incredibly successful at, and now you're doing something else. What is the thing that you want to, what is it that you most want to provide or give to the world, mankind, whatever that is, and what do you want your legacy to be?
Oh, that's a hard, long question, and I'm sipping tea. I need a glass of wine for that one. I will back up for a second. A zillion years ago, in my career, most of my career in retail had been on, at the end of the day, putting product on shelves, sourcing, traveling the world, doing trend or whatever. I realized after an especially very good year, that we had a major award, and the CEO, I got this award, and the CEO said, and this award goes to such and such, and we should put this on your gravestone because you were able to sell and do X, Y, and Z. And that was like a punch in the gut for me. Mm. And he's like, did I say something wrong? And this is in front of everybody, but I quietly said, the last thing I want on my tombstone is I sold a lot of shit. And he was like, what? And I said, I don't mean that to be disrespectful, but really? I sold a bunch of shit. No. At the end of the day, I want to have made a difference in somebody's life. And as you said earlier, I have two huge passions. One is the arts, and the other is food and hunger. They are related, but for two very different reasons. So if I can work with nonprofit organizations who are on the front lines of providing art, because art heals, is the bridge that connects all of us, regardless of where we came from or whatever. And food is something that we all can relate to. And sharing a meal, I think for the most part, is how all of us actually enjoy each other.
Yeah.
And too many of us in this country alone, let alone the world, do not know where our next meal is going to come from.
Yeah.
And that is wrong for you. As my mother would say, that's a sin and a shame. So in these United States, with the number of resources we have for families, for children to go to bed without a meal is just wrong. So whatever I can do to help those organizations, that's what I will do. My personal one here in the Bay Area is the Alameda County Community Food Bank. I live in Alameda County. So I'll stop there.
Okay, cool. And what I will say is you have made such an incredible difference, first of all, in my life. Just your friendship, your mentorship, your wisdom, your wit, and your fun. It's not always like, okay, well, the path to take, it's always been, we've had a great time too. It's always been a joy to talk to you and spend time with you. And I am always amazed that I learn something each and every time. And then obviously for me to work through the dream that I had, to promote cultural diversity in the classical arts, of being a soprano of color, and you got it, and you got me. And again, I started this by just sheer will to start with, and you helped me grow, you helped me finesse what I was doing. And most importantly, like, you touched so many lives, not only with the sponsorship or the support that came from Target, but also from the wisdom and the guidance that you gave to me on my journey and continue to give to me as I have broadened how I serve. I thank you for that. And like the ripple effect of who you are and what you do, we'll never know. But I love you and I so appreciate you and I thank you so much.
Thank you, Roz. Like any good relationship, it works both ways. So I can hold up a mirror because all that you say about what I have given you, you've done for me tenfold. So thank you, thank you, thank you. This has been very fun. And happy birthday.
Thank you, honey. Take care, be well, be safe, and I can't wait till we can see each other again.
Yep, I promise you'll be one of the first handful of folks that I will be looking to hug when we can. Okay.
Okay, sounds like a plan. Love you. See you soon.